Takes us over 77. Assuming people are sitting where they're supposed to.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Faculty Senate to order. Please find a seat. Just a reminder, the back two rows are for non-senators. The remaining rows are for senators. I'd like to welcome you all to our last Senate meeting before the holiday break. We have a full agenda, so let's get going. The minutes from the November 1st meeting have been posted. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, the minutes are approved. Now I'd like to invite President Emeritus to the podium.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by apologizing for missing a couple of your meetings. And I almost feel the need to introduce myself in case that you have forgotten who I am since September. But as we are entering a silent phase of our campaign, and with everything that is happening in Washington and nationally, I had to travel a lot the last few weeks, and I'm sorry that I missed the meetings of the Senate. So some of the quote-unquote news that I'm going to share with you, you have heard it already from others, but I want to put them in perspective, and I want to start by talking about access and affordability. And this is something that I said from day one of my arrival, that access and affordability are extremely important, and they go together because access without affordability is meaningless in many cases. We made a statement about access, and we talked about it in September when we admitted all South Carolinians who are going to be in the top 10% of their high school classrooms. And now we have addressed affordability as well a few weeks ago when we made it clear that these students who are in the top 10% of their class, if they're coming from families with income of $80,000, we guarantee them free tuition and fees. This has been a statement, and we called it the Carolina Commitment. It's a statement to our commitment to the state students, regardless of their financial backgrounds. And this is also a commitment to the rural areas of the state, because in many cases, the students who are among the top in the class do not go to college from these areas, given the affordability issues that they are facing. It is interesting that these initiatives were actually strongly and in a very positive way received comments from both sides of the aisle in South Carolina. And for those of you who follow the politics, you know that in this state, even if you ask what the day is today, there's not going to be bipartisan agreement. So bringing bipartisan agreement on an issue like this was very, very important. The second thing that I want to thank you for is once again the effort and the speed with which you approved and defined 3 additional certificates to the digital skills certificate that we already have put in action. These are important, and these are important because I really believe that when it comes to how do we prepare our students, right, for their future, of course we are educating. We're not training students. The liberal arts model that we have in higher education in the US has served everybody well, and we are preparing our students for careers that will last 40 years, and in many cases, careers that will include jobs, right, and corporations and or different organizations where they're going to work that we cannot even imagine today. So it is critical that we prepare and we educate students for a long-term career. At the same time, there is nothing wrong in adding to this some skills that they can use for their first job, because their first job, we know where it is and what is requiring. With your move to develop these certificates, right, and prepare them, give them the option. We're not requiring it from them. Giving them the option to prepare for this first job. And the topics that you have discussed and you have approved, digital skills, data analytics, effective communications, project management, and people management, these are the type of skills that everybody is looking for. I'm not saying this, the provost is not saying this, it's not the committee that approved it. These are national studies that they have done along these lines, and I think our students will be better prepared with them. The speed by which the Senate responded to this and made the approvals is fantastic and tells us that when we agree on something, we can achieve things very quickly. I'm advertising this across the country. Last week, I was in Germany together with the Secretary of Commerce talking to German corporations that they are active here in South Carolina. And I brought this up to very strong positive reaction from the people that they are hiring our folks here, our students here in South Carolina. Together with the initiative that we have taken to incentivize internships, that brings a package that is helping our students to get their first job, and our preference is for many of them to stay in the state of South Carolina and work in this state. And once again, I want to thank you for what you have done to make this possible. Since we are talking about the liberal arts, I want to once again reiterate the commitment that we are having to our humanities and the arts. I know that all of you follow national news. You know what happened at West Virginia. Now you have seen what has happened at the University of Arizona with a $200 million deficit and discussions about reevaluating programs, reevaluating some of the extracurriculum activities like athletics, in this case, in order to balance their budget. And I know that some of you may be a little bit jittery. I want to make sure that you understand that we have a commitment to the liberal arts education and to our humanities and social sciences and arts programs that we have. I want you to know that our fiscal position is very strong. I cannot believe, quite frankly, how one can say that we didn't know what kind of a deficit we had. For years from the administration, you will not hear anything like this from us. And the reason that we are in this very strong position is because of the reputation that we have and because our students and their families vote with their SUVs, not with their feet. It's their SUVs that they line up every fall and they come to us with great numbers. So don't worry about what you see elsewhere. You will see more of this in different states, but it's the demographics of the state and our ability, how attractive we are for a number of students that keeps us where we are. I owe you also a short update of what happened with SC Nexus. I had talked before about the statewide effort that we had been leading to get a designation from the federal government as a regional innovation and technical hub. 400 applications, 31 were approved, and we were one of the 31. The state of South Carolina led the effort. We organized the universities. We went to Commerce and asked Commerce to lead the effort because we thought we had better choices, and we are one of the 31 of these hubs designated by the feds. Only 3 of them, by the way, in the Southeast. And Georgia and North Carolina, they didn't get one. The three, in addition to ours, it's one in Alabama, Birmingham, about biotech, and one in Miami that is related to climate change. Ours has to do with energy, from generation to distribution, through smart grids, to storage, through batteries. This is not a big proposal that we want, it's just a designation. It's not a big fish, it's licensed to fish from here on, because we can compete with the other hubs for significant funding from the federal government, with the first one coming in, the first round of proposals. I believe the deadline is at the end of February, 70 million per proposal in this case to create infrastructure for these hubs. Both of them, the teaching aspects, the access and affordability, we hope to bring us more students, and the research aspects that they are growing point out once again to the need for faculty. Just a few weeks ago, the provost sent a message to the deans asking them for proposals to hire this year 50 new tenure track faculty members. And these are going to be net gain positions. They are not going to replace retired people. We are looking specifically to increase the faculty by this number. And as a result of this, these positions will stay with the provost to make sure that they don't get eliminated in any way, shape, or form, and make sure that these are on top of the faculty members that we have right now. The criteria are very simple, both teaching and research, and emphasis on teaching as well. We want to make sure that we continue, our faculty members, tenure track faculty members, continue to be at the front lines of teaching. We want actually, and we are talking with the provost about potentially some incentives to make sure that senior faculty members are teaching early classes, 100, 200 level classes, because quite frankly, a lot of the students come here because we're a research university. They realize how important and how up to speed our researchers are, but they don't see them in the classroom. And they don't see them in the classroom until much later. I came back from a background as a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin, where some of the top faculty members were teaching early courses. So we want to keep a balance. There's no this in any way, shape, or form is not an if you want a criticism against the professional faculty that we have, the teaching faculty or the adjunct faculty. They do a fantastic job, but our students want to see also our researchers there in the classroom. So that's what we're trying to do. Combination of the needs that we have for research in the different departments and the needs that we have for research. The deans have made, and the departments, I guess, were involved. They put their proposals together and fairly quickly will move ahead, approving 50 new faculty positions. We're going to do another 50 next year. So we want an increase of 100 net addition of faculty, tenure track faculty members within the next 2 years. You know that we have named the law school by now. This is old news. Again, this is a vote of confidence to the university. The last time that we named a college was in 2002. So it has been quite some time, 21 years by now. And I'm really grateful to Joe Rice, what he has done and his family to really have a vote of confidence on the work that is done in our law school. And as we move forward, their gift of $30 million to the school, 20 million of which, by the way, will be used for scholarships, the return that we'll get in the endowment. I'm confident that this will lift the school further up, and together with the funds available to hire new faculty as well, I think that we are moving in a direction with the law school that I want the rest of the university to follow as well, being recognized nationally by now for the work that they are doing. And this is not the end. This is just the beginning. I'm confident also that we will see more namings of colleges, departments, and programs because our supporters are ready and they want to make statements about their support for the university. I suspect you knew all of this by now. Let me tell you something that you don't know. Right. You will get a message tomorrow or Thursday, and the provost, I think, will talk a little bit about a change that we are making in the calendar. From starting next year, as you know, we start on Thursdays, the fall semester. We will move the beginning of the fourth semester to Tuesdays. 2 days, 2 extra days at the beginning of the semester. And as a result of this, the entire week of Thanksgiving will be without classrooms. We're doing this for 2 reasons. We're doing this because when we have our students arriving on Sunday and having Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night without anything else to do is a risk to some extent. So we want to cut this risk. And at the same time, giving them the opportunity to travel to their homes earlier makes it less expensive for them, makes it easier and safer if they're driving outside of the state, and gives them the opportunity also to return back, not during Sunday or Saturday when the fares in airlines and again the traffic are very heavy, and make it more convenient. And I suspect that our faculty and staff, although will be here and will be working until the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, will prepare to do this without classrooms so they can catch up, right, and prepare for the exam period and the last couple of weeks of teaching after Thanksgiving. The provost is going to give more details. We're not starting, well, we're starting next year, right? Eventually. So this is going to be fairly quick. And that was, again, discussion with the student government that they strongly supported this. And something else that you may not know either is that we are opening the libraries for 24 hours a day for the next couple of weeks during exams, because the students, again, made it very clear that this is a place that they spend time, they want to study, and they wanted the library to be open 24 hours. And I want to thank the library faculty and the dean for working well with us to make sure that we have the safety and the security that is needed, and at the same time keep the library open for 24 hours during this period. The last thing that I would like to mention is that we're approaching commencement again. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit embarrassed when the announcer says, here is the faculty, and here is the deans and the administration. It almost looks like, if you don't know what's going on, that the ratio of faculty to administration is 1-to-1. I try to change it to say, here are the representatives of the faculty. Let's finesse it and make sure that people don't believe that this is the total faculty that we have, right? But the point is that during graduation, the students don't know the deans. They don't know the provost. They if you don't have something that really you need to do during the commencements, come to commencements. This is the biggest party that we have every year. And after 4 years here, or 5 years or 6 years, we owe them a party. And they want you to be at the party. So please keep it in mind. I will be happy to answer your questions or to hear your comments, whatever you want to discuss. Yes. Hi. Hi, Carol.
I should get you wait for the microphone. Sorry, we have folks online. Sam's coming down now.
I'm Carol Harris, and I'm a senator from history. And I was wondering if you could say a few words about the comprehensive statewide transfer agreement and what that will mean for gen ed curriculum here and also in the rest of the system.
I think that's more of a provost issue that she can address. The only thing that I can say from my perspective is that the comprehensive agreement that was actually organized and signed by the Commission of Higher Education did not include USC Columbia. The reason is that let me make it clear, we don't disagree with the notion and the effort to create an agreement across the state. But the technical colleges had asked USC and Clemson, the three of us, to get together because some of the issues that we face as the two research universities are different what the comprehensives are facing. And we signed an agreement. We signed an agreement between the technical colleges, USC and Clemson. So you may have been talking, I don't know if you're talking about the CHE agreement or the agreement that the three of us put together to, and I'm sorry about that. I thought I had turned my phone off, but apparently I haven't. So that's why you saw two types of agreements there. It's not that there is a disagreement in terms of the principles. It was the details that needed to be worked out. And the convener of the three-party agreement were actually the technical colleges that invited Clemson and USC. Once that we did this, there was no point to sign the other agreement.
Okay, so all
And
of
the
this-
provost can give you some details. Yeah. Go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
I was just, so the system campuses signed the CHE agreement, but USC Columbia signed a separate agreement?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And you are right. All the issues are about the gen ed, right? We own the gen ed. We have to make sure that we protect the gen ed that we have.
Hi, Mark Minette, faculty senator from English. I appreciated what you said about the importance of the humanities. And it's reassuring to hear that our fiscal situation is so strong. I guess my question would be if there might be more that you could do to advocate for the humanities. At the same time, you're advocating for career readiness, right? To address some of the fallacies about the value or lack thereof of the humanities degree and give more concrete examples. When you speak about the value of an education at the University of South Carolina, of the value of the humanities education there, I think that might be something you're working on with the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, but I just wanted to offer some encouragement and thanks for any work that you could do on that front, because sometimes it seems like we're not mentioned because it wouldn't be, there wouldn't necessarily be a receptive audience for that part of it, but I feel like the more it's left out, the more ground we potentially lose, right? The more it's just an add-on, the riskier it becomes for the mission of the University of South Carolina to be successful.
Well, you may have heard me speaking in public and talking about about our mission and our goal, not only to advance science, but also to advance culture, right? And to advance society. And you cannot advance culture and society without the humanities. That's the bottom line, right? I view the humanities as our moral campus, if you want. I view the humanities as the group that is going to solve some of the most difficult problems that we are facing today. There are people who believe that every problem that we face today can be solved with an app. You know that this is not true. There are much deeper problems, and these are the ones that they affect everything that we do, from the economy to technology, and you know, in many cases, we are running with technology ahead of culture. AI is a good example, right? I ask repeatedly in national meetings, what are we going to do as a federal government? Because you know, representatives of the federal government show up in the meetings that we have, especially with the leadership of universities. And I keep asking, because AI now is the new shiny thing, that everything, it has huge potential, right? But it has a significant risk as well. And the question, we are ahead of the humanities again. We're ahead of culture, we're ahead from philosophy, we're ahead from principles by allowing AI to come all over the place. How we are going to address the socioeconomic, the cultural problems that these represent. That's the role of the humanities that I see. I think it advances the quality of life as well. And I believe that if we manage at some point, as many people push for, if we manage to have only STEM students and professionals eventually from the universities, I'm going to move to another country because life is not going to be interesting. anymore without the artists, without the humanists, without the people who advance our culture. I say this in public frequently and when we exchange ideas with others. It is critical, however, for the humanities to work their schedules and their curricula to make sure that their students are employable. Because we will lose students. We have seen the decrease in the number of students. One of the reasons that we talked about the certificates was exactly this, to give some additional skills to the students who are in the humanities to help them get a first job. I use as an example, when I talk about the digital skills certificate, I always use the example and I can say you can have a BA in philosophy. And I use the term, I use philosophy because my wife has degrees in philosophy, so I can say that easily. You can get a bachelor's degree, a BA in philosophy, and a certificate in digital skills. So this way you become attractive to a corporation that they may want somebody that these type of skills as well. And I'm glad that we are in agreement. I'm glad that we all presented these certificates, and I hope that these certificates also will help the students in humanities for employment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Emeritus, and now I'll turn it over to the Provost.
Well, thank you. Like the president, I missed the last meeting, but I know I was ably represented by our Dean of the Faculty and Interim Vice Provost, Marianne Fitzpatrick, who I'm sure did a fabulous job. She will tell you so herself. Right, Marianne? So first of all, I want to thank you so much for all of the feedback regarding First Day Complete. So 2 meetings ago, we heard from the bookstore committee about First Day Complete, and there was passionate arguments by this faculty group. We then went back to the student government, and I asked the student government to weigh in on First Day Complete. Again, this is that program where all your books would be put into your Blackboard course and be virtually available at a fixed cost of, I think, 15 or 30 per credit hour. Anyway, you guys resoundingly were opposed to it. I listened to your feedback. We are not moving forward with First Day Complete. So thank you to all of you who reached out to me individually, and thank you for your passion about books. I also, speaking of books and literature, I want you guys to know that we have a press here. Does everyone know about the USC Press? It's a fabulous press, and our specialty is actually the humanities. It's specifically civil rights and African American history in particular, as well as some culinary books as well. But there's a great book if you're looking for presents for the holidays. This is a beautiful book that's just been released called The Garrets of Columbia. And I just want to highlight the quality of the work we do at the press and encourage you as you're thinking about publishing your next book to consider the press. So this book is about a beautiful, I'll just read the description, a beautifully written and carefully researched book. It's about his great-grandparents, Caspar George Garrett and Anna Marie Garrett. Papa, as Caspar George was known to his family, was a professor at Allen University, a lawyer, and an editor of 3 newspapers. Dubbed Black South Carolina's most respected, disliked man, he was always ready to attack those he believed disloyal to his race. When his chaotic idealism and acerbic editorials resulted in his dismissal from Allen, his wife, Anna Maria, who was called Mama, came into her own as a family breadwinner. She was appointed supervisors of rural colored schools, trained teachers, and oversaw the construction of schoolhouses. At 51, this remarkable woman learned to drive, taking the back roads outside Columbia to supervise classrooms, conduct literacy drives, and instruct rural farm women in the basics of home economics. It's a great book, but I bring it to you to show you how much we value history here at the University of South Carolina and how much we value our press, and we would love to have you engage with it. The president mentioned commencement. you're free to go to our website and see where you can register to attend commencement. There's another fun activity that's happening this Friday if you want to sign up for another event. This is a very special event that was started in the spring semester. It's called Breakfast at Midnight, and it will occur Friday night at midnight. I think we're supposed to show up at 10:30 p.m. We did this last year in the Russell House. This year we're doing it in 2 locations, Russell House and our new campus village. And it's just a great event. We serve breakfast for about 2 hours with the president. And it's great to see our students. It's the last day of class and they're getting ready to launch into their studying for exams. So it's fun. It's great. Sign up. It's also somewhat heartbreaking to hear some of our students come through the line and say, "Can I have another pancake? I run out of swipes and I'm really hungry." So you get real life experience with students. The president mentioned we have a change in the academic calendar, and it's just a 2-day change, but it's a very important change for us to be aware of and planning. And believe me, our office is on it and planning for it very aggressively. Why does it matter? Then last year we brought on, I think if my memory's right, 132 new faculty when we started the year. This year, their official start date will be Friday before they will start teaching on Tuesday. So why that matters and why we're on it so carefully now is that in order to get an email address, in order to get Blackboard Ultra Course View access, you have to have completed all of your onboarding through HR in order to be accessible to those systems. So we need people ready to go when they land here. So, and they could even get Blackboard access and email access ahead of time. So we'll be working with department chairs, program directors to make sure that their new faculty in particular are ready to get started before we launch classes on that Tuesday. So I'm happy to entertain questions about that at the end, if you have them. We'll be moving our new faculty orientation to probably the 2nd or 3rd Friday of the semester so that our faculty can get into their departments and get familiar with the campus if they're new, and then we'll bring them on board a couple weeks later. So we're changing that up just a bit. The president's already mentioned that Thanksgiving week, we will have no classes. So expect this mass email either tomorrow or the following day from the president. This calendar change is not only applicable to Columbia, but to all of our sister campuses at Beaufort, Upstate, Aiken, and all of our 2-year regional campuses. So we have to make sure to communicate that very well. I have been conducting biweekly check-in calls with the provost, with leadership around campus. And I want to make you aware of these calls if you've not heard of them. The goal of the calls is they're 15 minutes long, and we bring you important information that is applicable to you. We ask the chairs to distribute that information down. I'm a strong believer that cascading information from administration down through the ranks is really vital for you to know what's going on and to keep you engaged and up to date. So this past month, we talked about our living learning communities. Dr. Laura Anderson, who works in my office now as Vice Provost for undergraduate students, has been a supervisor director in the Preston House before, has written a textbook on living learning communities. And our living learning communities are actually top ranked. I think we're in the top 10 nationally in our living learning communities. So we brought forward what they are, what the best practices are, and we're hoping to launch in the fall semester of 24 a new first gen LLC. So if you're not getting that information, please reach out to your chair because we want you to know what's going on. This past week, we had our 2 state lobbyists, Craig Parks and Derek McGee, talk about the upcoming legislative agenda and what to expect and, how to communicate with them if you get upset or concerned or hear something. So please go ahead and ask your chairs about that because we want you to know. All right, we also have been focused heavily on graduation and retention in my office. You've heard me talk about Garnet, which is this group that touches students various ways, the bursar, financial aid, registrar, mental health, every aspect of our students' experience here at USC. And so one thing that we've been focusing on is this first generation center. I just mentioned the LLC. Well, we were just awarded by the NASPA, which is a National Association of Student Professional Agency, Organization, Administration, a designation as a first generation campus. And that's a big deal. It's a foundation that supports this work. And there are only a few other institutions like UNC, like University of Florida, like University of Michigan that are in this group. And they provide us resources for how to run first-gen centers and how to take care of first-gen students. Why is that so important? 20% of our students are first-gen. So it matters a lot, and we really care about retaining them and graduating them. So I have some great news from the front of our enrollment management. So for the first time ever, and it's good news for all of us because it's job security, we have surpassed 50,000 applications, 50,000, which is up 14% from last year. So that's a tremendous testament of the confidence that people have in the University of South Carolina. It's because of not only our great enrollment management staff, but we have great faculty. And so I just wanted to let you know, don't worry too much about your job. We have plenty of students that will be coming next semester, and we'll be hopefully having a class about like we had this year. All right, just finally, Blackboard Ultra Colors transition. You should have gotten an email this week outlining, like, if you need help, click this link. We're really sending out messaging to make sure that you're on top of it for the transition by fall of 24. So if you haven't received that email, or you've check your spam box or check your deleted, don't auto delete it. It's an important message. And finally, I'll just wrap up with searches. You know, this week we have our Vice Provost for Global Affairs, who's also an assistant vice president, reporting to the president. So we have 3 external candidates visiting this week. If you aren't able to go and hear their talks, they are posted on the provost website, so you can go and listen to them. We hope to have that offer wrapped up before the end of the semester. And then finally, I just want to say, one of the things in our stand-up call, provost check-in call this Monday, is that we really care about your well-being and your mental health. And I always remind our faculty and staff on that call at the end that we have a big break coming up. So my office is under a no email and no text messaging during that break. We really want you to connect with your families, connect with your friends, relax, and prepare for your upcoming spring semester. So if you haven't heard it from your chair or your dean, you're hearing it from me now. Spread the word to your colleagues. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
I was wondering if you have any data in terms of those top 10%. What is the data for this year? Because automatically acceptance for university. Another question I have in terms of the scholarship, we have made a policy university would have optional for ACT and SAT. Are we changing our policy for some of the scholarship we have because some of requirement is required have those score for our students?
If they're required for the scholarship, we will not be changing that. So if an SAT or ACT is required, it will still be required. We are still test optional as of now. and about 56% of our students were test optional this year.
Follow up, some of those scholarship is university scholarship. I was wondering if we are thinking to change that policy or, requirement for that. If a student is top 3%, doesn't post the SAT, how they get those scholarships?
So I will talk to our financial aid and enrollment management team and figure that out. Come back with a proposal if we need to change.
Data for top 10% admission, because we have early admission, what is the data look like? I mean, you mentioned 50,000 applicants. I was wondering that policy, how much change are best the student coming to here, USC?
We don't have that number yet. I can say that in-state is up 6%. And our goal really is to embrace the state and make students in rural areas know if they're in the top of their class that they're welcome here at USC.
Rebecca Stern in the English department. I was wondering if you could give a little bit more information about the 50 lines that the president mentioned, and just to inform us about what the process is going to look like for.
I'd be happy to. So a call was issued during one of my provost check-in meetings, as well as to the deans at the Dean's Council meeting for requests. We also had requests for fields like AI, because AI, we're going to talk about this at our provost retreat, is going to transform how we teach, what we teach, and how students learn. We're already doing some of that. Arts and Sciences is ahead of the game in creating, I think they have 7 courses now in AI for the spring semester. So the process. So the call went out. We received probably about 75 requests from every college in the library for hires. We, the president and the VPR have reviewed those requests and are prioritizing them according to the teaching loads currently, student faculty ratios in the department, as well as how large the department already is, which is kind of associated with student faculty ratio. And we've narrowed down, but we still have more narrowing to do. So there'll be one more meeting. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Provost Arnett. Now we'll move on to reports of the faculty committees, and courses and curricula will go first.
The Committee on Curriculum and Courses met on November 8th and brings forward 150 proposals, 76 from CAS, 6 from the Moore School, 20 from CEC, 2 from Arnold, 1 from HRSM, 5 from CIC, 5 from Nursing, 23 from Music, 5 from Education, 1 from Interdisciplinary, 4 from Palmetto, 1 from Honors, and 1 from Social Work. We have one typo that was noted to us that we would like to put in correction. This should not be Chinese classical studies. It should be classical studies. And that fits with what's down below in the actual degree description, if you'd like me to forward that. And I would like to thank the person who messaged one of our committee to let them know that.
Okay, this is a motion from committee, so it does not require a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the new program, say aye. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it.
The committee has realized, dealing with 150 of these proposals, that many of the proposers suffered more than they should have, much like a student who didn't get a syllabus or a rubric for their project or something like that. And so one of our plans for the spring is to take all of the advice and rules that are out there and put them in one nice place that's easier to find so everyone knows what it's there. So if any of your faculty have horror stories of things that were sent back to them that they think we might not have thought of, me and my co-chair would both like to hear about those so that we can make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to a joint report from Faculty Advisory Committee and the University Committee on Professional Track Faculty.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. At this point in time, we are not bringing a motion. We're bringing it. I'm sorry, Tim Baker, Chair UCPTF. And at this time, we are bringing information to you for your review and asking for feedback. And Bill's going to give you some information about an upcoming town hall that we're going to schedule in January. And then we hope to bring you a motion on the document that you received for the February 7th meeting. I would like to take just a minute to talk about the highlights of the changes, and then I'll turn it over to Bill. A lot of feedback has been taken since last spring we had a meeting. A lot of different folks have given us various suggestions. Are you able to link it? Okay. I'm going to link it and I can roll down through it that way. And I just want to cover the biggest sections and the things that you might or might not have questions. But the other, can we go to the other one?
Oh, yeah.
I'll go to the live doc. Yes. Yes. So the document is 12 pages in length. I know that's long. What has changed? What's different? The second paragraph is somewhat important. This takes language from the AAUP. We do have some members in some of our units that are full-time equivalent, only instruction with no service requirements. And what do we do if that person is then given a service requirement? Are they going to have a change in duties that are otherwise assigned? Are they going to have a change in pay? We're trying to address that there. We have some standard language about tenure. Then tenure transfer between tenure and tenure track or time not counting, which is standard policy. Faculty titles. Under instruction faculty, we have something new. We have a teaching professor track. Now we use the term clinical, I believe, almost throughout the university for those that have a terminal degree. And the goal is that those that actually teach, that is what they do, would be a teaching professor. Those that are in the medical professions and the School of Pharmacy would actually be retain the clinical titles. New hires would become teaching faculty or teaching professors. And there would later have to be a policy which would allow any pre-existing, I, for example, hold the clinical title, to request a change to the teaching professor title, which actually for a lot of us would probably lead to a lot fewer questions about what do you do for a living, right? It would be clear. So that's there. And again, those are somewhat equivalent, but again, for new hires, we would take the clinical track in pharmacy and medical professions. Instructor lecture, and also there's a clinical instructor lecture. Two changes here. The first is the addition of a third track. We now are our third level. We only have two levels now, an instructor or lecturer and a senior of the two. We would actually be adding a principal instructor or principal lecturer as a third level, and that would require 9 years. We previously had written 10, but we made the top level 9. Now notice that the senior still stays at 6 years, where we're allowing 5 years in the clinical and teaching professor tracks. Those are the two changes effective there. We have instructor, librarian, and legal writing professor. We have the clinical professors and the clinical lecturers. I think we've already talked about the changes there. We do have a research track and a professor practice track. We did spend a lot of time reflecting after what you told us last year, and we realized that the units are so different, and even within the units, the roles of professional track faculty are very broad, and that we needed to give autonomy to the units with respect to how they do some of this. And we've tried to do that in this document. So we talk about the creation at the unit level of a professional track committee. And you'll notice in the fourth paragraph, it does talk about the committee should include both professional and tenure track, but mostly with respect not to their tenure status, but to their expertise that they can give to that committee. We have a section on appointments, reappointments, and promotion. So it's now disentangled, if you will. We have unit criteria and procedures, and this is very important. A lot of schools and colleges are undergoing this right now. And going forward, we hope that this gives sort of the framework for that, even though many are now submitting their changes at the request of the provost office. The other items are general standards for assessment. We did put some in there. One thing to note that seems very simple, but we have 5 levels of performance measurement. Some schools or colleges have 3 or 4. We want to get to a standard there. So that is something that is called out specifically. The evaluation of teaching, research, and scholarship where applicable, and clinical practice and other activities. The other things we talked about were the identification of criteria for reappointment and promotion, the promotion file process, going through even what we would call out. Those are the 12 pages of the document, and those are the major changes. Now, what we're going to ask for, instead of we're not voting right now, we're asking for input from you. Okay, so if you have changes, we would ask that you reach out to one of the 2 of us, actually both of us, via email, and we will take these changes before the UCPTF and the FAC. We are working jointly on this, and we will try to address those changes. If we think they make sense, we will incorporate them. We will bring back this original document because this is what you have to work with. We will also bring back a document that has any of the changes such that we would have a motion, and then we would have an amendment to incorporate those all in one. So you'll have 2 documents to look at prior to the February 7th meeting. Okay.
So like Tim said, where are we going to go from here? First, I want to thank UCPTF and the members of FAC who've worked so much on this. If you look at it or you've had the chance to look at it, you know it's a vastly different document than what we were discussing. I think a much improved document, what we were discussing last spring. This is what we will start with when we meet in February. That means your departments, and you need to communicate this to your colleagues in your departments. You have 9 weeks. So we're trying to give you the maximum amount of time to pour over this. Also in the interim, on Thursday, January the 18th, there will be a single town hall that you can attend both either in person or virtually. Now, we're doing it on one day. We're doing it on a day. We will start at 9 a.m. and we will be there till 9 p.m. So it's always difficult to find a good time to get people's input, but if we figured we were around for 12 hours, if you've got a 12-hour teaching schedule, then you are much. I think that there needs to be a comic book, a superhero Marvel candidate, somebody. But anyway, we will be in the Hollings Library, which is connected to Thomas Cooper, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We will also make sure that there is virtual participation. That information will be coming out. I'm going to send it to you before the holiday break because I don't want it to get lost before the holiday break. But look for it starting when we get back. I believe in blasting things out multiple times. Again, if you don't get something or you have anybody on your faculty in your department who wants more information, bother me, bother Tim. We want to be able to get this very important piece done. What else? Have I forgotten anything else? Not related to that. Questions? Up here front.
Right here in the front.
Hi. Do I need to stand up?
Identify yourself.
Jean Garani from Languages, Literatures and Cultures. Could you just please give us your entire names and email addresses?
Sure. I'm Bill Suddeth. My email is suddethw. That's 2 U's and 2 D's. It's SUDDUTHW. Don't put an E in that second vowel, or it might go to somebody else. But it's suddethw@mailbox.sc.edu or 777-1775.
Tim Baker. The email is timothy.baker@moore.sc.edu. Yes, ma'am. Timothy.baker@moore.sc.edu.
Was there someone else in the back?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm Laura Brashears. I'm from sociology. So I have kind of a double question, and I realize that this is just the first step, and then I will get sent to the provost's office and things may change. But you've made it clear that for the instructor of teaching, a master's is required, but you have not made it clear what's required for the teaching professor track. And so then the second part of my question is, depending on what those criteria end up being, will current instructors, like I'm assuming maybe a PhD for the teaching professor track, will current instructors, once these changes go through, who have a PhD, automatically get transferred? Is that kind of what you're assuming or not?
I would address that what we have obviously in this recommendation is that I do believe it is there somewhere is that a terminal degree would be required for the clinical or the teaching professor tracks, right? The instructor or lecturer tracks would be a master's degree with 18 hours in the field. Now, the unit criteria will then have to drive what level we have. And I know we have a broad array, but these titles would be authorized. So this would be something that if your unit is not already reworking its unit criteria, that you would look at, because specifically calling out the titles that you use is a part of that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but as the leader of sociology's PTF unit criteria, I've been told by CAS to just do 3 levels, that since we don't have this teaching professor thing yet, we just have instructor, senior instructor, distinguished instructor, and we are supposed to turn this in March. So you see where the...
Okay, yeah, what I would suggest, anybody that has a question on this, I'm actually going to point to Marianne Fitzpatrick in the back of the room. You reach out to her, optionally feel free to copy me, and we will address that. Is that fair? And that goes for any, because I know a number of you are currently working on this and have lots of questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do want to address a little bit of the timeline issue, which you kind of brought up is, again, if the faculty senate passes this change, it still has to go in front of the general faculty in May and be approved by the board of trustees, usually in the June meeting. So I understand if a department, a program, or a school is working on accreditation, reaccreditation, or whatever, check with Marianne Fitzpatrick in the provost office as how that may be affecting you, but the final stamp won't happen until it's passed by the board of trustees.
Hey,
I'm Catherine McClung-Smith. I'm senator from the School of Medicine, and I apologize if I do this wrong. I'm a lot more comfortable in the OR. There's under clinical faculty, a lot of the others have real good descriptions about the difference between the clinical professor track and the clinical instructor lecturer track. There's not a good description there, and I know the question's going to come up. I think the previous format just had the clinical professor track, which I'm on. But I'll need to take back some information as far as the difference between the two. Do they teach more if we're a clinical instructor, and what are the criteria?
We would think that a clinical instructor would be more lent towards the teaching aspects and lesser in research. And if I'm correct, do we have a senator here from pharmacy? In pharmacy, are you not considering the addition of clinical instructors? Is that not correct? Okay, it seems that there was, for some reason, that's a recollection that might be something that's new. But I would say between the two, if you have suggestions where we should enhance that or refine that, please let us know, and we're glad to work with you on that.
I'm honestly not entirely certain how we'd even be able to tease it out with the physicians.
So yeah, my name's Jill Michaels. I'm with pharmacy. Sorry, I lost my voice. We've had instructors, and they've been more so that work in our lab and teaching actually, how to be a pharmacist type stuff. We haven't had instructors too much in the classroom, so it's been more lab based with our instructors.
Okay.
Whereas the clinical professor, I'm a clinical associate professor of pediatric neurosurgery. All of my teaching is in the operating room, but I also have some teaching in the lecture hall. And then I do some research, and I sit on the guidelines committee, and I'm on the IRB. So I'm good with just going with the one, but
Right.
I mean, we can.
Understood. And remember, that will be handled at unit criteria. If that's something that either, medicine college said we're not going to use, then your unit criteria would not call it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just in the interest of time and getting through the rest of the agenda, since we're not going to have formal motion until February. If you do have additional questions, please contact him and Bill. And again, we'll do our best to get everything assimilated into the document to have a parallel document by February to consider. Okay, thank you.
I have one last thing.
Okay.
So if you have a colleague who wants to get involved and really involved in this, I have 2 vacancies that are coming up in the spring semester. Please send me their names. Okay. We've done a lot. FAC really gets a lot of things done. We interact with all the committees, but we need the bodies, we need the eyes, we need the good ideas that come from having a full committee. So please contact me if you have a friend or an enemy that you would like to see working on these issues.
Okay, now we'll move on to admissions.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Laura Herbert. I'm chair of the Committee on Admissions, and I have 2 motions to bring forward to you today, and Wayne is pulling them up. The first motion is we need to create a policy statement on readmission to make it clear that acceptance by admissions does not supersede or override other university actions that would prevent a student from re-enrolling, such as financial, conduct, or public safety restrictions. And this stems from, we've had some cases recently where students were academically eligible to return to USC, but they had outstanding conduct issues. So it made them ineligible to enroll. And so the motion before you today is that admission or readmission to the university is contingent on being otherwise eligible to enroll. Students must be in good standing with the university and have no unresolved obligations or restrictions that prevent or prohibit enrollment.
Okay, since it's a motion from committee, it needs no second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? All right, the motion passes.
All right, our second motion is the university is discontinuing its Columbia-based Associate of Arts and Associate of Science degrees that are currently offered to soldiers that are based in Fort Jackson. So these students will likely continue to be served through the Palmetto College for the first 1 or 2 years that they need to complete the degree. But then students will be able to transfer to our Columbia campus to be able to complete bachelor's degrees, like upper division requirements. And so these programs had special requirements, but since we're discontinuing these programs, we need to align the language with our other regular transfer requirements. And so their special requirements were that they needed 45 semester hours and they needed a minimum of a GPA of 2.0, but to align them with our regular transfer requirements, we have some proposed revisions here. To complete at least 30 semester hours and a minimum grade point of 2.25 is required. 2.0 if they're within the USA system and they transfer, but if they're on the outside, they need a 2.25. So those are the changes for our organizational leadership program, which is a bachelor degree, and then the same for our liberal studies program, which is also a bachelor degree.
Okay, motion does not need a second. Since it's coming from committee. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Okay, on behalf of steering, I'll bring forward the motion that we posted. I gave notice at the last meeting and we posted the document soon after. This is a modification to the Senate standing rules regarding agendas, and let me open that. It's already open. There we go. So basically, the current, just to remind you, the current language in the standing rules of the Senate, which are at the back of the faculty manual and the appendices, has a certain set order for the agenda that is contains committee titles that no longer are in existence and other issues. We would like to change that language to allow essentially for the believe it's is it the steering committee or the chair to set that order? Standing, blah, 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 the chair, yeah. Wow, I don't even know my own powers. Okay, to allow the chair to set that agenda based on the needs of the Senate at that particular meeting. We also have a few other minor modifications to the order of business in terms of adding in a slot for invited guest speakers and also moving the report of the chair after the report of the secretary. So in other words, there would no longer be a set order for committee reports or special committee reports. It would just be set per meeting based on the needs of the Senate for that meeting. All right, since it's coming from the steering committee that needs no second, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. All opposed? All right, the motion passes. I would now like Faculty Welfare Committee to come forward for their report. Bring up that QR code. Okay.
Hello, Liam Hine, Faculty Welfare. And what I'd like to talk about briefly is make a correction to information we received back in spring about what used to be called the Behavioral Intervention Team. What the university did a year or two ago is they rebranded and called it the Student Care Outreach Team. Now, it's not super easy to find for old timers like me. We're going to look for BIT on the site and you're not going to find anything. So what we have is a quick QR code. If you have your phone, snap a picture of that, bookmark it. And so if you run into problems where you need help with a student, I mean, we're not talking 911 help, but we're talking they need additional resources, social work resources, counseling, other types of things, someone to look in on them. This would be your place to go. There's a phone number with that link, as well as they would also like it. There's a little form to fill out and they'll look into things. Now, again, if it's an emergency situation, don't file that report with these guys, call 911. So quick shortcut, they're working on their PR for this, and we've asked for them to do the old index cards like they used to do. You could just stick it on your monitor or on your filing cabinet and have that resource, but they don't have that yet. Next on what I'd like.
Question.
Holy cow. Well, I'm very sorry. Student Care Outreach Team, you're going to probably have to just Google it then for now. It did work. I don't know why it's not working now. So my apologies. We'll blame it on Wayne.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it's still tagged with a bit associated with it. Okay, so coming up is the care team associated. You can still search bit and it'll show. Vice President Fitzpatrick, or Vice Provost Fitzpatrick, if you're here, make your way down, please. The next thing I want to talk about is a document that's been developed by the Provost's office that is guidance on external harassment. It is in the documents that you were provided. Vice Provost Fitzpatrick did all the work behind this.
We invite you in.
Yeah, okay. And what it is gives you some ideas in various situations that many of us have run across. You get somebody on social media who's calling you out. If it's just Joe Schmo who's causing you grief about a particular position, you know, we all deal with that. We block them and that's the end of it. But what happens if it's some bigwig at the State House or at the Senate? How can you handle this? There's guidance for the different levels, chairs, deans, HR, of how they should handle the situation and what you should do. Jump in here.
Thank you, Liam. The provost was very concerned, rightly so, about the tension that so many faculty are feeling in this kind of complicated world of freedom of expression and academic freedom. And we have a number of faculty who have been involved in complicated situations with external harassment. I'm the dean of the faculty, which means the ombudsperson and the civility advocate. I'm the Title IX coordinator for faculty and general complicated problems. And so we have structures and processes for things that happen on campus. All right, things that happen with students, all right, which is why we started with that. But we were concerned about how we could show the commitment that the institution has to its faculty. And the important thing about this document, as you look at it, is it does not just emerge from Provost Arnett, but rather it has been vetted and approved across all the levels of the organization. So if we say, if you're concerned, first of all, we give, you know, it's based on a document that's used widely in the Big Ten programs. It's considered a model, really, document. It does not promise that the lawyers will defend you. It does not do that, but it says very much we are really concerned. If you have any fear about your safety, you immediately contact the chief of police's office. We have people in threat and violence areas that will help you. If you're worried about your safety at home because of something that's happened, they will coordinate with your local police. All right. This says if you're really concerned and you want to make a public statement, our strategic communication people will help you with that. You can report, you can come to me if it's too complicated to figure out what to do. I mean, I think what it really shows is the commitment of every office on this campus to you and to try to help you navigate these situations. We do say, those of you who've known me for a long time, that we do say we give traditional communication advice, in which we say a very large number of people are harassed on social media in the United States of America. The hope of the internet as the free exchange of wonderful information has really, those of us who had that hope initially have kind of given that up. But it's the mayor of Paris just said she's getting off of social media because it's a sewer, which kind of sums it up. But we want you to know, we say, don't engage with trolls. Don't get involved with these things. This is really negative. If you become worried about your reputation, we have people who are experts in this who can help you think about a statement. Some of the senior leaders said, remind the faculty they don't have to answer the newspapers. They don't have to give appointments and things. So I think this is a document that is a good faith document. We are really reorganizing the entire faculty's provost website so that our commitments are clear to you in the Office of Faculty Affairs and academic priorities and other kinds of things. So I'm happy to take questions. The document is quite repetitive because it says the same thing over and over again, but think about the web. We want to have a section that says for the faculty, and then for the chairs, and then for the deans. So that's part of what we're doing. I'm happy to take questions. I am not here to tell you this is an easy issue or a straightforward issue, because people have the right to say some very ugly things, all right? And I know, as your leader, how to handle that when it happens on campus. The social media world is one we'll work on together. So I want, one of the things that one of the great members of the committee said was, I think you should define this more narrowly. And I said, no, I don't want to, because I don't want people to feel they can't come to me or come to us. If it's one, it can be one really serious message that's problematic for you. Okay, and we want to make sure the door is open so you feel that way. Okay, and I've worked with Liam and members of the committee, and I'm really glad for their assistance and help. So there it is. Questions, observations?
Yeah, one.
Yes, sir.
Just waiting for a mic.
Oh, the mic, yes.
Hi, Mark Minette, faculty senator from English. Thanks so much for your hard work on this. My question is relates to kind of what would be different about the administration's responses to certain situations now under these new guidelines from before. Specifically, we had a faculty member who was named in a public open letter tweeted by all members, save one, of South Carolina's congressional delegation that named the faculty member, named the courses that faculty member taught, and used the word eradicate in relation to what the faculty member was teaching. And I think it seemed to a lot of faculty there was a lack of response to that instance of faculty naming, shaming, harassment. Is there a substantive change as a result of these policies in the way the administration would respond to that?
Mark, I've been here since January 1st, 2005, and I would say what I tried to do was demonstrate and lay out and get the commitments across all the university offices that they are ready to help you. One of the problems you have, I don't know what happened as a consequence of that situation, but one of the problems we have is nobody knows where to go. Okay, nobody understands that there are people willing to talk with you about it and help direct responses to that. And so I think that's one of the things I tried to do in this document, and it's really part of the provost's commitment to faculty that we're going to lay this out here. So one of the things, you know, when people are today, it's a very complicated world, and we have an open carry state, you know, and therefore it could be one serious message of some high-end person with you. And so that's what I wanted to say. It's this will be worked out in the exact examples of things that happen to people and how we can step up. And one of the things Liam said is, we don't have to report anything, do we? I said, no, you don't have to. But I want to know, these are the steps you can take. And the very first thing we say is, if you're worried about your safety, immediately go here. Okay. And I'm going to call every week about all the complaints that come in across our areas. But I mean, you know, we're involved in these things. So I'm not trying to sell anything to you, except nothing is written down here in quite this way. And I think this is really a first step toward making sure you know where to go, what to do. Okay.
Thank you.
So.
I'm Mary-Ann. Is it on? Oh, there we go. I'm Mary-Ann Bickle, and I kind of hesitated to say this because someone called me a Pollyanna, and maybe I am. I don't know. I kind of dislike that phrase.
They call me that too.
It's really.
All right, stop.
I really dislike that phrase, but I have family members and that always ask me a lot about what's happening on my campus. And so, you know, I'll talk to them about it. And so here's where my Pollyanna might be coming out. But I'll say, you know, what's happening nationwide or in certain campuses, that's not happening on my campus. And they'll say, well, we want you to be safe. I'm like, yeah, I'm safe. And I don't feel like I'm being threatened. And well, where are you walking? Just, will you please calm down? I'm fine. And so I want to express, and I wanted to get to Michael before he ran, but I know he was busy, but I needed to take notes. So I want to express that thank you, that I feel safe, and trust me, I rarely feel safe. You know, I'm like, you know, turn on my lights and blah, 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 and I live alone. But I do not feel like this is an unsafe campus, and I do not see people demonstrating, and I do not feel that we're out of control. And we have 50,000 people applying, although, you know, do not have them all in my class, you know, or give me a raise. Oh, wait, I'm retiring. But you see what I'm saying? It's just, so it feels really good that you're being proactive. And that we have leadership that doesn't have to go to Washington because we're burning down. And it just feels really nice. And if that sounds like I'm Pollyanna, fine, but we're not part of the problem. And
no, but Mary-Ann, I think my concern, having been out of administration and coming back, you know, I think there's tremendous anxiety and tension.
Well, I believe that. No, I believe that there might be really a lot of anxiety. And I'm not discounting anybody who's anxious. I would never discount them. And I apologize if I sounded like that. I'm not trying to discount anybody's anxiety. Because I don't know what other people are feeling, but I guess I just want to say thank you for doing something about it.
It's my job, as they say.
But not everybody feels that way, you know,
actually.
And because everybody has a different anxiety level, because I have anxiety levels, we won't talk about that. So,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I would like to say, I thought Liam was going to talk about that.
Just
Coward.
Rebecca Stern from the Department of English, just to say that I do have colleagues who have received credible threats
Right.
and have legitimate anxieties, and there are actual issues that do happen on this campus. I'm glad you haven't encountered them, but they are substantial and they are real.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Liam, are you all finished with your report? Okay. Okay, and we'll finish out committee reports with an informational report from INDEV. And do you need me to bring, oh, your slides, right? We have those open, I think.
You could open the report too.
Let's see, where is that thing? So many. There we go. There's the report, and there's we have two PowerPoints open, so just make sure you grab yours.
Okay. How do I get back to the report if I need? Do I just click?
Just go down to the Chrome,
the Chrome?
And then it's open.
Okay, thank you. Hey, everybody, thanks for your time. Packed schedule today, I know, so thanks for humoring me as I deliver the report. The teaching assessment report from the Committee on Instructional Development. This is a report we've been working on for the past 2 semesters. I'm happy to provide to the faculty and the Faculty Senate today. Just to review the committee charge that the aim was to lay the groundwork for improving teaching assessment and teaching effectiveness. The task that the committee was given was to review the status of teaching assessment in relation to 3 things: the consensus on student evaluations of teaching and the substantial body of literature. There's a bibliography provided in that section of the report that's 20 sources. It could have been exponentially larger, and colleagues from across the university have shared sources with us that confirm the major findings that we've seen. The second is consensus best practices, along with some emerging solutions in relation to problems with SETs. And I'll get to a definition of that and consensus best practices. We looked at 6 statements of best practice as part of this. And then the final item we were asked to investigate is what are the relevant policies on teaching assessment here at the University of South Carolina in relation to our accreditors, faculty manual language, academic affairs policy, and then what are units doing, which is a big question. So we weren't able to get total information on that, but specifically in relation to student evaluations of teaching. So some notes on terminology, you'll find these in the summary page of the report. So sorry if I'm just repeating information you already know because you've read it diligently. The first is, and this came up kind of what are we looking at? How are we defining things? It came up a little bit in the agenda, right, when this was a report on SETs, but it goes beyond that. What we were looking at is teaching assessment. So we thought it would be helpful to provide some guidance we need. So teaching assessment, for our purposes, all processes used in the assessment of teaching for purposes either or both, formative, that is developmental, and then summative, tenure and promotion, merit-based awards and races. And thanks to, I'm an ignoramus, so thanks to Nate Carnes at the Center for Teaching Excellence for getting me up to speed on the language here. The second is, what do we mean by student evaluations of teaching, or SETs? This is what they're referred to in the literature. They're commonly known here as course evaluations or student evaluations, right? So those terms tend to be used interchangeably. They're conventional, largely quantitative, right? We get Likert scale ratings, ratings-based, and of course surveys, primarily used for summative purposes, as opposed to student assessment of teaching. So when you see in the report us talking about teaching assessment, we're not just talking about SETs. When we talk about SETs, we're only talking about SETs. When we're talking about student assessment of teaching, we're talking about a more general category than SETs. It can take many, student assessment of teaching can take many forms. Potentially, you know, depending on context, design, and interpretation, it can provide valuable information for both formative and summative purposes. And it can be gathered at any point during or after a specific course, a student's progress through the university. So you look at the literature on the assessment of teaching and you find that there's a much broader understanding of student assessment of teaching and what it can do, what it can be, than SETs, which is maybe what we're most familiar with. I think that's probably on a slide. So just to get into the consensus around SETs, again, these are the conventional, largely quantitative ratings-based end-of-course surveys, primarily used for summative purposes. So I put this in bold and I italicized it, and I probably should have underlined it too. SETs do not measure, this is the consensus understanding, SETs do not measure teaching effectiveness. They provide poor measures of student learning, and they likely lead to grade inflation and work deflation. So if you look at the bibliography, there's plenty of sources there. If you looked at, for instance, the latest newsletter from the Chronicle of Higher Education, which you'll have access to thanks to university libraries, Len Gutkin wrote a summary with lots of links. You can link to those articles. You can go down the, not the rabbit hole, but the journey towards discovery about the issues and some responses related to SETs. Well, I jumped ahead. Okay, the second, underline this as well, SETs demonstrate systemic biases, including gender and racial biases and biases against non-native English speakers, and their use has been cited in lawsuits, discrimination lawsuits. You may have seen the news at Vassar. There was a lawsuit there that cited research around SETs being used for summative purposes there, evaluation promotion raises. So there's an argument that, I mean, the evidence supports pretty clearly that they discriminate against protected classes. Just as one example, and thanks to committee member Valerie Vieira for the visualizations. This is an example of gender bias in evaluations of female identifying instructors, that they're typically evaluated on measures related to instructor-student reaction. So if you just look at the open field responses, these are the kinds of words that tend to be used in relation to female identifying instructors. For male identifying instructors, right, typically evaluated on measures related to effectiveness and knowledgeability. And this is not old research, okay? This is not antiquated research before we became enlightened. This is how systemic bias works, right? Also, SETs are influenced by factors such as discipline, modality, weather, and sugar intake. Some of you more devious faculty members may know and seen the results of. I should have passed out candies before this presentation, I think. SET statistical data is frequently prone to misinterpretation and misuse in assessment, and SETs are often poorly designed. They confound factors, but also they consolidate responses that should not be consolidated into overall scores. And then finally, and this is not consensus, this is not around consensus around SET. Sorry that the heading is wrong. Teaching assessment at USC is dependent on the use of SET data. Highly. Though this is ambiguously prescribed by policy and USC's accreditor, SAC-COC cautions against over-reliance on this. So for instance, in SAC-COC guidelines, they talk about how some institutions reporting reliance solely on student evaluations of teaching have been found inadequate in terms of the policy. Sorry. All right. So consensus best practices for teaching assessment. Here's what we found. So one, student assessment of teaching rather than SETs per se should be valued. They should be solicited at multiple points during the semester over the course of a student's career and framed as feedback rather than instructor ratings. Peer assessment should integrate classroom observations by trained observers. So there is, if you look at the report around consensus best practices, there are general principles, and then there's consensus best practices around student assessment of teaching, peer assessment of teaching, and self-assessment of teaching. So oftentimes peer assessment of teaching is criticized for being substanceless, or I don't know, everybody gets an A kind of criticism. Best practices call for thoughtful approach, often, relying on, say, rubrics in the training of faculty and observing their peers. But that's not all that peer assessment of teaching is, according to best practices, right? So we tend to conflate that with peer observations. That's just one part of it, if you think about best practices. Assessment should be holistic, incorporating peer, student, and self-assessment. And self-assessment usually is thought of as, and there's language in the report about this, is usually understood not just as like you rate yourself, right? But you provide, faculty provide a thoughtful response to the feedback they've been given and plans for how they might incorporate that feedback into their teaching and the work that they've done beyond feedback gathered, like in training, say at the CTE. Assessment should be evidence-based, efficient, and not prohibitively labor-intensive. Faculty should play a central role in assessment policies and processes, right? And this, I guess, is not a surprise, right? The higher education founded on peer review, right? It's what tenure is all about, but also as a general principle. And along with that, rights and responsibilities to do it well. Assessment should primarily serve formative, that is, developmental purposes. This one's important. The institution and its units should provide the necessary conditions and support for proper assessment and its use in faculty development. So there's a lot of language around a responsibility for institution and its units to provide resources, right? To provide a framing in which teaching is valued. That involves the assessment of teaching as one component. So what are others doing? We're kind of behind the curve. Many institutions, including peers and peer aspirants, while still valuing student feedback on teaching, are rethinking their dependence on SCTs and are developing new policies and frameworks for teaching assessment around consensus best practices. And so in the best practices part of the report, we provide links to the statements and links to the organizations describing who they are, but also in relation to each principle and finding and best practice, we try to provide where it would be most useful links to websites for universities where they summarize their approaches. So short-term responses to the findings. Units can make use of the resources offered by the Center for Teaching Excellence in relation to holistic assessment of teaching and improving teaching effectiveness. And there's a question mark here for next steps because this is where your feedback comes into. Possible longer-term responses to the findings, revisions to the faculty manual language on teaching assessment, revisions, additions to academic affairs policy on teaching assessment. ACAF 1.04 is the only academic affairs policy that I've been able to find that addresses the assessment of teaching, and it's focused only on course evaluations. The faculty manual language mentions peer assessment and student assessment and student evaluations, and includes language that suggests those student evaluations will necessarily be quantitative. I think in language that was meant to kind of like encourage or mandate the use of contextualizing statements around scores, right? But best practices don't call for the use of this kind of numerical data in summative assessment. at least in conventional SETs. So revisions to ACAP policy encourage units to review, revise their tenure, promotion, hiring, appointment, and reappointment policies and procedures relating to the assessment of teaching. So that's the summary of the report. Sorry if it was redundant with the report that you all read. I'm willing to take questions. I'm happy to take questions. Willing to take questions. Yeah. I will take questions.
Millen Kuncher from Physics and Astronomy over here. So you made a distinction between SCTs and student assessment on, I think, slide number 12 or 13. Yeah. What's the distinction?
So SETs, when they're referred to in the literature, are they used to be delivered on Scantron forms with maybe an extra page for open-ended questions. They ask students to rate aspects of their course and their instructor, right? Typically on a Likert scale. I think I'm using that term correctly, like 1 to 5. Each one is a different adjective. 5 is better, right? So this is what we proctor now at the end of every semester.
And student assessment.
So student assessment of teaching is a potentially broader range of practices. So it can involve student feedback surveys rather than student ratings, which is basically what SETs are, right? It can involve targeted questions. For instance, what did you think of this particular assignment and the way in which it was framed? Which part of this class was particularly useful for you? I think that may be like an open one, but like even more specific than that, tailored to the class, tailored to the discipline, and oriented around getting honest feedback from students relating not to their satisfaction, which is what SETs measure all their like customer satisfaction, which is the framework in which they're often employed, and realistically is what they are.
So I'm on our department's retention committee. We had a huge exodus of physics students. Like if 100 joined, in the end, 5 would survive. Basic dropout. So as part of that assignment, I had long conversations with all of our undergraduates.
Yeah.
So it took a long time to develop a rapport. Eventually, they opened up. And in the October meeting, it was discussed why people are not filling out the student evaluation. So I talked to them, and the perception is there's no consequence and no useful action comes out of that.
Right.
And oftentimes what they write, those are dismissed as opinions. So what you said about the numerical scores, I agree. But I would say just the opposite. More attention needs to be paid to student evaluation, the comments. Because when they're saying something very specific, so I met with these people and I wrote a long report and we discussed this in the faculty. But the general view is these are opinions. It's not science. But if 20 people out of 20 are saying something very specific, that this is why we're having a trouble, how is that an opinion? It's more reliable than an Amazon review from my point of view. So I think students need to be listened to and they need to know that they're being listened to. So that's part of the reason they don't pay attention to this process. And in some universities, Stanford, for example, all evaluations are open. I'm not recommending that, but every student can see every evaluation for every professor. And it's not so much the score, but basically what happened in great detail. And they look at that before they decide which courses to sign up for the following term. So I'm not saying we should do that, but more attention needs to be paid to what they're saying as far as the qualitative comments are concerned.
Thank you. I guess I would want to respond because this is an issue that came up. It's a concern that the committee, and I thank the committee, both this semester's members and last semester members, very much for their contributions. They did a lot of work on this. Which was a misunderstanding that when we say SETs, right, don't measure teaching effectiveness, SETs are systemically biased, yeah, that we're saying student assessment and student feedback should not be valued. It's the opposite, which is that student assessment or student feedback on teaching, right, should be solicited at multiple times during the semester is the basic feedback, and not just during the semester, but after they've completed the course. It shouldn't just take the form of surveys, although that's definitely one way to do it, but discussions like the one that you had, right? So you can imagine a unit that has, as part of what it does to review its teaching effectiveness is at the unit level, right, is to have those kinds of conversations with students, which typically yield significantly different outcomes, right, than the SETs, right? So I just want to reinforce this distinction between SETs, right, and student assessment of teaching. And in fact, what best practice suggests is that student feedback on teaching should be solicited more than we're currently doing it, but it should be in a different form and it should be used for different purposes. That is not for summative purposes, but for developmental purposes. Oh, and I just want to add one thing, I'm sorry, but that it's the role of faculty to interpret the student assessment of teaching, whatever form it takes, right? So that idea of interpretation is there in best practices. So I'm sorry I interrupted.
Sure. Nancy Buchan, the business school. Has anyone studied or compared the evaluations that we at universities take versus Rate My Professor? Because one thing is I would think that as the rates of our response rates has gone down, the rates of Rate My Professor responsiveness have gone up. Also, I wonder if the content is slightly different, which aside from the hot chili peppers and all that kind of stuff, but you know, I think that the comments may be more direct or more in, you know, I'm just wondering, has someone qualitatively studied the comments on Rate My Professor versus what we see in university evaluations?
Yes. So I'm not an expert, but I did read some things. So and there are more people on the committee, I don't know if they're here, who may volunteer to supplement my answer. But in fact, the literature on student evaluations of teachings finds a very strong correlation between the results on Rate My Professor and student evaluations of teaching, to the extent that strong justifications have been provided for thinking about what Rate My Professor indicates about student, how students use student evaluations. Like there's such a huge overlap. And speaking of the chili pepper, right, the finding is that like attractiveness of the faculty member is correlated with the rating of the faculty member, conventionally judged attractiveness, right? There's no absolute, is correlated with the evaluation of the faculty member. So, I mean, I think the research kind of suggests that we may be fooling ourselves if we don't think we're just providing a Rate My Professor. I guess one difference might be that you can go and look at Rate My Professor, and students can't go and look at the overall student evaluations of teaching.
Hold on. Oh yeah, there we go. Hi, Eileen Knotts from the Biological Sciences Department. I just want to say a comment that I really appreciate this because one, our evaluations have significantly gone down. We are lucky if we're getting 5 to 10% of students actually giving us evaluations. So 20 out of 20, wow, that's incredible because that is not what we see. And we have to be very careful in how we interpret the comments from the students because we find those that are filling out the evaluations, we're getting the extremes. You're either getting the extremes of they really love you or they really hate you. And what I've seen over the past several years, I've been teaching at this university for near 10 years, I'm seeing less and less of the positive and a lot of hate. And again, it's just a few students, but those are the ones that are filling it out. So just a comment, I really enjoy the student assessment of teaching rather than evaluation.
Thank you. I know it's just a comment, but I can respond to that based on what we've seen. So low response rates are certainly a problem when it comes to student evaluations of teaching, but they're also kind of beside the point in that even if every student responded, they wouldn't measure teaching effectiveness still. So as it is, the strongest research shows that students with the strongest feelings are the ones who respond. We were invited to, and we were happy to work with the Provost Office on ways to think about improving response rates. And some guidance should have been or is going to be sent out, or probably was because everybody's proctored their student evaluations of teaching by now or are about to, on how to improve response rates for their courses, including proctoring them in class. And I'd say what the committee had in mind while they were doing this is not so much to make sure everybody was could be sure to get as much bad information as possible. If that, I mean, that's what the evidence says, right? But that we prepare ourselves to take seriously that it's valuable to get student feedback, right? And so we make sure we construct opportunities to do that in which we get as much student feedback as possible. Yeah, so that's important. And to your point about the language, like I've heard horror stories from faculty anecdotally about racially charged language being used, not overtly because that's not how systemic racism works, but faculty members being described in certain ways and administrators saying things like be nicer. So administrators need to be trained in how to interpret student feedback, particularly in relation to the biases.
College of Nursing. I was wondering about the comment also. There is a correlation between teacher, instructor, and course evaluation. And we're talking only about the course evaluation here. And if we are going to look at the course evaluation, to me, why we evaluate every single course every semester? So that need to be looked at it too, because if the course, the content is fine, in 1 year or 2 years can be evaluated, but those evaluation also we have to careful is correlated with the teacher. You may teach the same content, the same course, you get lower evaluation one semester to another because it's related to the faculty who's teaching it.
Yeah, I think frequency is definitely a question that is raised in best practice. I don't think there's a definitive answer to that other than student feedback, right, on teaching should be gathered for every course. But again, these problems with summative student evaluations of teaching and how they're used. Is it my getting the hook?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we have some stuff to get through.
yeah. So just to sum up, if you have information, feedback, if your unit is doing something interesting and related to student evaluation of teaching, INDEV will be working on this question of student assessment of teaching next semester. We've been asked by the Provost Office to, and we're open to hear what you think and devise some solutions, because it's just kind of is like this can seem like a complaint fest, right? You know, so we want to be constructive as well. Principally constructive. That's what you always say, Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine to knock what we have, but come up with something better, I guess, is the point. Yeah. And I do want to thank Mark and INDEV because they've really done a tremendous amount of work on important things this semester. Maybe historically high amount of work compared to what previous years of INDEV. Okay, so moving forward, we do have a short report from Nate Carnes from CTE about the Blackboard to Ultra Course View transition and the resources available for that. Don't forget that's happening. Come heck or high water, as they say, it will happen. Pull your slides up, Nate.
Thank you very much, Wayne, and good afternoon, colleagues. My PowerPoint, by the way, is much shorter than Mark's. But what I want to do here is to just share some information with you. As you know, or probably should know, the provost has mentioned this and it's been publicized that starting by fall 2024, we should be moving to Blackboard Ultra Course View. And so I just wanted to briefly speak to some assistance that CTE will be providing because I know some people may have some consternation about the move, but I would say have no fear, assistance is near. So as you can see on this slide particularly deals with support that CTE offers in the face of our instructional design team, which has been very active. And I know many of you have used our services in that way, that we will continue to do the one-to-one consultations or group consultations with the focus on Ultra Course View, as well as doing where it says in-person and virtual presentations. These are all with individuals or groups of individuals who wish to use our services. And of course, we will be doing this in collaboration with the ELS to host virtual hours as sharing the consultations. Our instructional designers are now working with different individuals about copying their courses into Ultra Course View, setting up sandboxes for you to mess around with the technology before you post it, that sort of thing, and providing assistance if you're designing a new course, how to do that within the Ultra Course View environment. We also are in the process of developing a template, just like we do with the sample syllabus statements and with the schedules. We're in the process of putting that up so you can just take it and move it right over and customize it for your use. So that will continue. That should make the process simpler and less of a headache for you. Otherwise, I want to point out this is the departmental outreach is a new strategy that we will be using, and that we will come at your request or at the request of your department chair to give presentations on Ultra Course View. It says presentations, but that also includes maybe doing a workshop. So if your unit leader wants to devote a time where people bring their computers, we will gladly work with you in that venue as well, and other kinds of tailored presentations. Tailored being, we could come and do a 10-minute presentation, or we could do a 30-minute, or however you or your department wants. We can customize in different ways. We also don't have to be there in person because of the advancement of technology. We're willing to do things at a distance as well. So one thing I do want to point out as I move on to the resources, that we have not reached out so much to the College of Arts and Science, our largest unit on campus, primarily because Lydia Frass is handling that group. Lydia, years ago, for those of us who've been around for a while, to be a part of, essential part of our instructional design team. We haven't kicked her out. We don't disown her. She's just in another place doing excellent work. So we continue to work with her. And also we continue to work with DOIT. For those of you who do not know, DOIT has been offering presentations through CTE as part of our schedule of events. We just had one yesterday in which you can join those and get additional information. There are other resources that are posted on the CTE website, and they're all listed right here. There's a resource page on the third bullet. That's very much what you will find on the CTE page. Yes, they are duplicated on purpose so that you can go to either location. So you can go to one of two places and get the same information, just trying to multiply and make it easy for you to view and take in. And that's all the presentation. At this time, I'll take questions. Our email is at the bottom if you think of a question afterward, but I'll take some now.
Abbas Tawakoli with College of Nursing. I was wondering about the TAP for my course evaluation. We're talking about evaluation, response rate is very low, and that tab is not in the Ultra Blackboard. Are you planning to sort of in your design to add that tab for course evaluation, my course evaluation?
CTE doesn't handle that part, but that would be a question for DOIT. We handle the pedagogical part, which includes course design, the planning, and the execution of what you put on your UCV.
I mean, I think that is very important for our increasing response rate, because if we don't have that tab, we are depending on the link, and already that's going to be problematic. I think with the design, I guess I believe you guys can set up that as tab and link it with the whatever class climate it is. So I would suggest to look at that. I don't know about the IT, but this is something I guess comes from Blackboard, not IT.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will take that under serious consideration. I'll relay that to DOIT because they handle that part.
Marco Valtorta, Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Do you also have some training activities for teaching assistants?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, no other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to my report, which will be very brief. One quick announcement about the venue for spring meetings. We will be moving to the Russell House Theater starting in February and have the rest of our meetings there, which will give us a little more space and be a little more centrally located. So I'll make sure to also send a reminder about that before the first meeting. We were fortunate to get a nominee for the secretary-elect position. Just to remind you, the nominations for that have been open since October. And Marco Auditorium, who just introduced himself from College of Engineering and Computing, has agreed to run for that position. Thank you, Marco. Took a great weight off my shoulders for sure. Just to remind you, since we have had nominations open the previous two meetings, nominations from the floor are closed at this meeting. So basically, we all just need to vote on Marco as our candidate. So all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hopefully no. Okay. So Marco, congratulations. I look forward to working with you. Does the secretary have anything to report? Thanks to Marco. Yes, I agree. I second that. Oh, sorry. One other thing. If there are any standing committees, chairs or representatives here who have vacancies they need filled and have a name for those vacancies, we could actually take care of that at this meeting. And I realize I forgot to poll you all about that before the meeting. I'm guessing probably not. Okay, we'll take care of that in February if necessary. Any new business to come before the Senate? Oh, yes, thank you. Thanks, Mark, for the reminder. Mark wanted me to remind everyone, and it's a good segue from Nate's presentation. There is a waiver process that is now up and running or ready to go to request an exemption from transitioning to Blackboard Ultra Course View for very compelling pedagogical or other reasons besides just personal preference. So the link for that, maybe we'll distribute it by. Sorry, go ahead, Mark. Okay, so it's under resources for instructors on the Ultra Course View go.sc.edu/ ultra / whatever it is. Okay. I'll try to also get that link sent out to people so you can distribute it. So if you do think you have a very strong reason, you can use that waiver process. It's not guaranteed. It will go before a committee and be carefully reviewed. But that committee does include faculty members, so it's not solely administrative. Any other new business to come before the Senate? Anything for the good of the order? Then I guess we will. Do I need to move to adjourn? I always forget. Nope. Okay. I declare this meeting adjourned.